Welcome back. In this small section, we're going to cover SMBGhost Windows 10 vulnerability. Since there is no module available for the Metasploit framework regarding this vulnerability, we are going to need to exploit it manually. And by manually, I mean we will have to find a working exploit ourselves, run it ourselves, and redirect the connection to our Kali Linux machine ourselves. All of these tasks Metasploit framework did for us automatically, and since we can't really rely on tools, we're going to learn through this Windows 10 vulnerability how we can do all of that ourselves. Now, the vulnerability that we're exploiting is rather new. I believe it got disclosed in June 2020, and for this we will need to install Windows 10 virtual machine. Not all versions are vulnerable since it got patched, so we will have to install a vulnerable version of Windows 10 machine. Since this as well is an SMB vulnerability, we won't need any additional software to run on our target machine for this exploit to work, which makes it even more dangerous, just like the previous two vulnerabilities, which were Eternal Blue and the Blue Keep, but they were attacking Windows 7. This one attacks Windows 10. All our target needs to have is port 445 open and some previous version of Windows 10. The exact vulnerable version that we are looking for is either Windows 10 1903 or Windows 10 1909. So you will need ISO file as usual to create this machine, and both of these versions are vulnerable to the SMBGhost attack. Let me show you right now where we can download a previous version of Windows 10 ISO file. And by the way, we will be using this Windows machine in the next section as well to test the payloads that we will create. But more about that later on. For now, let's focus on creating our virtual environment for this attack. So what you want to do first is you want to navigate to this rufus.ie website, and this software right here that we're going to download is used to create bootable USB drives with the ISO files. Now, you might be asking, well, why are we going to need this? We're not going to boot into our computer over USB drive, we are installing a virtual machine, and that is true. But this software also offers us to download some previous versions of Windows 10 operating system. That's why you want to go down here, click on this Rufus 3.11 and download the file. It is the size of 1.1 megabyte. Once you download it, you should be having this file right here on the desktop. Double click on that file, and it will ask for the administrator password. You want to click on yes or type in the password. And right here where we want to go is this arrow next to the select button. Now here's a small advice. Sometimes this arrow right here will not appear, and it actually didn't appear to me once I downloaded the software for the first time. So what I did is I tried restarting this program several times. So just close this, open this again, close it and open it again. That might work, and what also might work is going right here to the application settings and changing this check for updates. Then click on close, restart the program, and eventually this arrow right here should appear. Once it appears, click on it and click on download. And once you select the download, click on download once again, and this will start running download script. In just a few seconds, you should have this small window pop up. Here we want to select what operating system we want to download. If I click on here, it will ask me if I want Windows 8 or Windows 10. I want to select Windows 10, click on continue. In the next step, it will ask me which exact release do I want to select, and right here we want to go with this one, which is 19H1 build 18362.356, and it says right here the date is 2019 September or 9th month. So click on this right here, then click on continue. You can select Windows 10 Home, click on continue here as well. Language we can leave on English. And the last step, which is architecture, we can leave on x64. Then you can click on download right here, or you can download using a browser. If you simply just click on download, it will open the file explorer, and here you can pick where you want to save it on your desktop. Keep in mind that the size of the file is around 5 GB, so this will take some time. Since I already have it downloaded, I will not be downloading it again. For you, just wait for the download to finish and you should have a Windows 10 ISO file ready. Make sure that you pick the exact same version that I did right here, and once all of that is finished, you can close this program. The next step is to install Windows 10 Virtual Machine. So I already got one running right here, and for you, you can do it the same way that we did with any other machine, so just type Windows 10, select right here Microsoft Windows, Windows 10 64-bit, click on Next, choose 2 GB of RAM, or choose the same amount of RAM that you used for the Windows 7, click on Next. Here we want to create a virtual hard disk. All of these steps we can next. Here I got 25 GB in my case, and you can choose whatever you want right here, and this will create your virtual machine. Now, since I already have it, I will delete it, but before I delete it, another 2 settings that you want to choose is, as we did with the Windows 7 machine, under the storage, under the empty, you want to remove, and you want to add the Windows 10 ISO file, which I have right here. The next setting that you want to change is from NAT to bridged adapter. Once you do all of that, you can start the process of installing Windows 10. Now, there is not any important step in Windows 10 installation, so you can do it however you want. But just a pro tip, once it gets to the part where it asks you for the account creation, where you need to specify an email address and all of that, you can skip that part by unplugging your device from the internet, and then it will allow you to create an offline Windows account, so you won't need to create an email for the Windows 10 account. All of the other steps are not important, you can do them as you like, and once you do all of that, you can start your Windows 10 machine. Another thing that we need to do to get our Windows 10 machine fully ready for this attack is to disable the firewall. So go down here, type Control Panel, and the way we disable it on Windows 10 is the same way that we disabled it on Windows 7. So click on Control Panel right here, click on System and Security, click on Windows Defender Firewall, and turn it off in this button right here, which says Turn Windows Defender Firewall on or off. Mine is currently off. Once you do that, everything is ready and you should be good to go for the next video, where we are going to try to search for the exploit for this particular attack. See you in the next video. Welcome back. And now that we got our Windows 10 machine set up, we want to perform a vulnerability scan real quick to see whether it is vulnerable, and then I will show you a tool that we can use to crash the target system. So first of all, open up both of your Cal Linux and Windows 10 machines. Right here I ran the ipconfig command to check out the IP address of the Windows 10 machine, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan it real quick just to see what ports it has open and whether our setup was correct from the previous video. Okay, great. We got the port 445 open. That is all we need. Now, I have also performed a Nessus vulnerability scan this morning on Windows 10 machine, and for some reason it didn't manage to find this SMBGhost vulnerability. Now, that could be some type of a bug, maybe, perhaps, since if I type locate and then the vulnerability name, which is CVE-2020-0796, and this is just the name for this particular vulnerability, and I type enter, here it will find the path to the Nessus with the module for that vulnerability. So it seems that it has a plugin for that vulnerability and it should be able to discover it. But once again, for me personally, it didn't manage to find it. You can try it out. You know right now how to use Nessus, so just open it up, open your Windows 10 machine and run a scan in Nessus on your Windows 10 machine and see if you can come up with this vulnerability from there. But what we want to do right now is we want to copy this name and we want to go to the Firefox. Since, remember, this is something that we do not have in Metasploit framework, we must find the exploit ourselves. Once the Firefox opens up, paste the vulnerability name right here, and I will just type it real quick. So 2020-0796. And we can add GitHub. Let us check out whether there are some available tools on GitHub repository. So we got a few responses right here. And what we want to go with first is the vulnerability scanner. And what I mean by vulnerability scanner is we want a tool that will tell us whether the target machine is vulnerable to this attack without crashing or exploiting it. So I will go to this link right here, and it seems that this is the tool that we need. It says the vulnerability name, scanner.py, identifying and mitigating the CVE 2020-0796 flaw in the fly. So let's check it out. Let's copy the name of this vulnerability. Then we will go to our desktop and we will git clone that repository to our desktop directory. Once it finishes downloading, we can type ls. Here it is, right here. Let's change directory to there by typing cd, and let's see which files we have. So we have only this scanner.py file. So it is a Python file. Let us go to this page and just check real quick whether it is a Python 2 or 3 program, and by the usage that we can see right here, it seems that it is a Python 3 program. So let's test it out. If I go right here, check out the IP address of Windows 10 machine. For me it is 192.168.1.5. Let's run the program, Python 3, and then type the IP address. Well, we get a response that we wanted. It says right here, vulnerable. Great. Now we can test other tools that will crash and exploit the target. First, I want to show you a tool that you can use to just crash the target. And with this tool, we don't need anything else besides the IP address of the target machine. So you can crash any target just by knowing its IP address. For the exploit that we will cover in the next video, we're going to cheat a little bit. We need something in order for the exploit to work. And I will show you that in the next video. For now, we want to see how we can crash the target machine. So if I go all the way down, you will see this GitHub link. It is from Gian Sitting, and it has the name of our vulnerability. If I go right here, we can see we got a few files. Once again, this is a Python tool. Under here, we got the usage, so we got a demo GIF. Here we can see the command that he is running. And if we go right here and copy the tool, and once again, we can go to our desktop and git clone the tool name, the link, paste right here, wait for the download to finish, and if I type ls, we now have two directories. This one is the scanner, and this one is the one that we just downloaded. So let's go cd, CVE, we got the demo GIF, the readme file, and the vulnerability itself. Of course, if we want to, we can nano the vulnerability file or the Python file, and we can scroll all the way down to see the code of this exploit, and down here we get the usage. So all we need to specify, as it says right here, is the target IP address. Let's try it out. If I go right here and type Python, I believe it's Python 3 once again, and then CVE.py, and then the IP address of the target machine. Before I run it, I will lower the screen so we can see both of our targets before running this program. And right here, if I press enter, well, here it is. We successfully crashed the target machine. It got the blue screen of death, as we can see right here, and it is now restarting. And this is also a critical vulnerability. Once again, I need to mention that you should never be able to crash the target machine just by knowing its IP address. This is something that we would also 100% write down inside of our penetration testing report. Now that we managed to scan the target to see whether it is vulnerable, and we used another tool to crash the target, let's see in the next video how we can exploit the target machine and gain shell back inside of our Cal Linux machine. See you in the next video. Welcome back. Time to gain access to our Windows 10 machine using the SMBGhost vulnerability. For now, we managed to scan it to see if it's vulnerable, and we also managed to find a tool that we can use to crash the target system. But ideally, we don't want to crash it. Instead, we want to gain shell on that target machine. Well, with this vulnerability, it is not that easy. There are some things that we need to know in order to be able to remotely exploit it. Let's see what I mean. The first thing that we must do is we must download a tool that we are going to use for the exploitation. And I already checked a few of them out, and I found the best working one to be this ZecOps CVE vulnerability. If you just type the same thing that we typed from the previous video, which is the vulnerability name and then GitHub, you should find this ZecOps link to be on the first page. Click on it, and down here we can see the files that we get, and right here we also see the usage of the tool itself. But before we get into all of this, let us first download the tool from GitHub. So let's copy the link right here, copy, go to our terminal and type git clone and then the tool link. Press enter. And here it is, it finished downloading. Let us type ls and we will see a bunch of these directories with the same name. This one, however, has this extension of RCE and then POC, which stands for Remote Code Execution Proof of Concept. Let's change the directory to that directory. And if I type ls right here, we're going to see a bunch of files. So we get this .bat file, which runs on Windows. We get this SMBGhost assembly shellcode for the 64-bit version, and we get this Python SMB bleeding ghost file, which is the exploit itself. But we don't really know how exactly do we combine all of these files. So let's go back to the page and check out the usage of the program. The first step right here tells us that make sure Python and ncat are installed. Then run this .bat file on the target computer and adjust the offsets at the top of the SMB bleeding ghost.py file according to the script output. What does this mean? Well, let's go to the Python file first. Let us nano it to see what offsets do they mean. And I assume they mean these offsets right here. As we can see, there are 5 of them and they have different offsets. But you might be asking, well, it tells us right here that we must run this on the target computer. And what's the point then of calling this an exploit if there is a file that we must run on the target computer first? Well, let's go to the note down here. As it says, you might be wondering why it is necessary to run the .bat file script on the target computer. And doesn't it defeat the whole point of the remote code execution being remote? Well, here is the explanation. These offsets are not random and are the same on all Windows instances of the same Windows version. One could make the attack more universal by detecting the target Windows version and adjusting the offsets automatically, or by not relying on them altogether. What does this mean? Well, these offsets right here are the same for the same Windows version. So for example, this Windows version that we got right here, if we had 1,000 machines that were running the same Windows version, well, it is enough that we run this .bat file on this one to check out the offsets, then we adjust the offsets right here inside of our exploit, and then we can attack all the 1,000 machines without having to run the .bat file on them. But a different version of this Windows machine might have a different offset, which will then make our exploit not work. So we must check the offsets first. How we're going to do that? Well, as it says right here, we're going to run the .bat file on the target system. So I already downloaded the tool right here on my Windows machine. Here it is on the desktop. And what you can do is you can just open the Windows 10 machine, open the Internet Explorer, type the vulnerability name and then GitHub, navigate to the ZecOps tool, and then if you click on it, click on this code arrow right here, and click on download zip. This will download the tool for you, and you should have it right here on the desktop right after it. Great. Once you do that, what we can do is we can navigate using our terminal to that tool, so cd desktop and then cd CVE. If I type dir right here, and I run the bat file, of course you can run it using command prompt, or you can just double click on this file, and double click on the calculate target offsets. As we can see, this will open another terminal, and this will give us those 5 offsets for this particular Windows 10 version. What we must do right now is we must change these offsets to match inside of our Python file right here. So let's check it out. Here we got 2D170. The first one is the same. 32210, the second one is also the same. The third one also appears to be the same. The fourth one is different. Here it ends with 370 and here it ends with 410. So let's change that first. Let's type it 370. And the last one is also different. So here it is BAFA8, and here, if we change it, BAFA8, now everything is good. So if we Ctrl O to save this exploit, now we should have a working exploit. We can close this, we don't need it anymore. We can also close this, and if I go back to the page to check out the next step, it tells us run ncat with the following command line arguments. So the purpose of running ncat is because once we exploit the target and we run the payload, it must connect to somewhere. Now, this listening for the incoming connection, Metasploit framework did for us automatically. Right now, we must do it ourselves, and we're going to do it with the help of ncat. So to listen for the incoming connection, we can type nc and then -lvp and then the port number. In this case, let us listen on port 4444. This will listen for the incoming connections, and once we run the exploit, the target machine will try to connect back to this port number right here on our IP address. Therefore, right after it, we should have a shell pop-up right here, and we should be able to execute commands on target machine. Great. Let's check out the next step. The next step is to run the .py file while following the command line arguments. So the command that we must run is the file name, then the target IP address, then the Kali Linux IP address, and then the port that we're listening on. And this reverse shell IP is just the IP address of the machine that you're listening for the incoming connections. And you get the explanation right here as well. So let's try it out. We're listening right here already, and let us run the file right here. We're going to use Python 3, SMBGhost.py, then comes the target's IP address, which is in my case 192.168.1.5, as it says right here. Then comes the IP address of my Kali Linux machine, and I'm going to check it out inside of a third terminal real quick. It is .1.12. So let's type it right here, and the last step is to specify the port number that we're listening on, and in our case, that is the port 4444. If I press enter, we get an error that says no attribute WinDLL. And I knew this error will come up. The solution to this is to run the exploit from a Windows machine. So this file right here must be ran from another Windows machine, and then we can redirect the connection to this Kali Linux machine to pop a shell. Why is that? Well, this C-types library has no attribute WinDLL, which is only to be ran in a Windows environment, I believe. So let's test it out. For this, I'm going to use my main Windows 10 machine right here to run the exploit, and I will redirect the connection, once exploited, to the Kali Linux machine that is already listening for the incoming connections. Now I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but let's give it a try. I already downloaded the exploit right here. Here is the file containing all of the other files. And if I open my command prompt, then I navigate to this directory right here containing the exploit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run the exact same command that I ran previously on my Kali Linux machine, just this time I will be running it from my main Windows 10 machine. So the IP address of the target is first, then comes the IP address of the machine that is listening for the incoming connections. And this might sound confusing, but this is still the IP address of our Kali Linux machine. If you want, however, you can also connect back to this Windows 10 machine, but in that case you must install netcat for Windows and listen using netcat from a Windows machine. And then right here you would specify the IP address of the Windows 10 machine that is running the exploit. Since there is no need for me to do that, I will just specify the Cal Linux IP address, and the port number is 4444. Great, the command is here, and if we execute it, it will start the exploit, and sometimes this exploit will crash the target, as we can see right here. The first try of running this exploit crashed our target machine. And this is something that you must get used to once running these type of exploits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control-C this to quit this exploit. And then what I'm going to do, clear the screen using CLS command, and I will run this command once again. Just I will wait for this Windows 10 machine to boot up once again. And we're going to give it a second try. And now that we're logged in, I will run the command once again. Now there is a chance that it will crash once again, but hopefully it will not. And here it is, it crashed once again, so I'm just going to restart it again real quick and then run the exploit for the third time. Hopefully the third time it will work. Okay, here it is, and hopefully the third time will be our lucky run. Let's run the exploit. For now everything seems to be working. We haven't reached this point in the past 2 tries, so hopefully right now the target will not crash. And what we're looking for at the end of this is, after the exploit is done, we're looking to gain a shell right here inside of our Cal Linux machine. So let's wait for this to finish. It tells us right here, wrote shellcode. And if I go to my Cal Linux machine, here it is. We got the shell on our Windows 10 target machine. If I type who am I, we are the system level account, so we're the highest level account possible. If I type ipconfig, just to check whether we have the same IP address, and that indeed is the same machine. So we successfully exploited the Windows 10 target machine. Just for this, we had to use a Windows machine to run the exploit because of some libraries inside of the Python file. And if you notice right here, it tells us that if we disconnect and if we exit this exploit, the target will probably crash. So what we would want to do is we would want to execute all of the commands that we want to execute, do what we need to do on the target machine, and then after we've done and we've exited the shell, we can go right here, stop the exploit, and once this exploit has been disrupted, that will again crash the target machine, as we can see right here. Just this time we managed to run the shell, we managed to execute commands on the target machine for as long as we wanted before crashing the machine. So the goal right here is to first gain the shell, and then the machine will crash, and not crash the machine at the beginning of the exploit. But that is something that we do not have control of. So sometimes you will gain the shell, and sometimes you might crash the target machine. Okay, great. So we successfully exploited Windows 10 machine. We did it manually, with the help of tools that we found online. We also set up our own listener that was waiting for the incoming connections. And right now that we covered all of these vulnerabilities, starting from the next video, we're going to see how we can attack targets that do not have any vulnerability. So we're going to see how we can generate our own payloads and how we can deliver them to the target machine. See you in the next video.